Welcome, everybody, to the Art of a Peaceful Mind. My name is Kim Root. I'm your host, and today I'd like to have us all welcome Rohini Ross. She is a licensed therapist and a transformative coach. She's written recently a book called the Soul-Centered Series. That's right, the Soul-Centered Series, and Marriage, also the Soul-Centered Series. I think that's book one. So let's introduce her and she can talk. Um, Hi, Rohini. How are you?
Hi, Kim. Thanks so much for having me here.
I'm really excited to have you here. You work both with individuals and with couples. I think today we are going to focus on couples and how to help couples, because there's a lot of issues there with having peace and feeling centered in yourself in a relationship, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Would you like to? I'm really curious about what motivated you first to become a therapist, and then specifically, I think your love is to work with couples. So, what was
Mhm.
the motivation for you?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. And it was quite a meandering journey to get to sort of working in a therapeutic and coaching capacity. But when I was little, ever since I was a young child, I knew in my mind that I was going to become a doctor. Like that was what I wanted to do, and I was committed to that. And so, I went to university. I'm doing pre-med classes. My first year, I do really well. Second year comes along, and I start to implode. And the level of coursework gets much harder. Social life starts to take off. Then I was in a very scary car accident. I was only hurt in a minor way, but I really thought I was going to die in that accident. And after that, I just went into this really a deep depression. I just felt, suicidal. I felt like I couldn't function. And so that completely derailed any kind of plans of continuing with the classes that I was doing. And I talked with a dean, and he suggested, why don't you just take the classes that you enjoy? And I just decided to do that. And so I ended up doing a degree in cultural geography. And I went on to do my master's in cultural geography. And as part of my master's work, I went down to Guatemala and was doing research down there. And while I was down there, I got these really nasty parasites. And so I was living in Canada at the time doing my graduate work. And I went to the doctor, and he was telling me that there was nothing wrong with me. And I knew that I was really sick. I knew that I was not okay. And so this is in my early 20s, back in, early 90s. And so I found a naturopathic doctor. And I had never been in that world before. And so it just completely opened my eyes to a whole other way of relating to my health. And so I started to understand what would help my body heal from these parasites, even though medical doctors were telling me there was nothing to do. I also started yoga and meditation before there was a yoga studio on every corner of the city. And so it just opened me up to a spiritual orientation to life that I had not had before. And in that, I realized that I still wanted to be a healer, that I still wanted to work in helping people to have less suffering in their lives. And so I finished my master's degree, but I decided that I wasn't going to continue and do the PhD as I planned. And I wanted to find what that path was going to be for me. And I didn't know at that point. And so I took some time off. I had not been in connection with my father since I was about 2 years old. And so I decided to take that time to seek him out. I moved to London and reconnected with my father, and just, took some time to really think things through and figure it out. And so life went on. And then I came to the US. And while I was here, I came across this program in spiritual psychology. And as soon as I saw this MA program, I knew that's the program that I want to do. And it just felt like it was an intersection of all of the things that I had been interested in and following. And so that just really brought it to life. And so I did that program. I then went on and became a licensed therapist, got my 3,000 hours, and started seeing clients that way. And through continuing education, I also got a coaching certificate. And what I would say is, like, throughout there's been a through line of really waking people up to their true nature. And even though that's been the intention all along, there was a shift in how I went about doing that. Excuse me. And so what the coaching program did is it really opened me up to a much more simple way of helping people to access that place of home inside of themselves, that place of inner peace that you're talking about in this program, and not to have to go through all of the traditional therapeutic ways of going into the past, into the emotions, into the suffering as a way to come out the other side. Because what I was noticing was happening is that people weren't really coming out the other side. They were going into the experience and they would come back out of it, but then they would go back into it again. And so it wasn't really transformative, sustainable change. And so what I saw, and what happened for me is that I had a personal experience of that really shifted how I worked with clients. And so as I'm doing all of this training and working with clients, of course, I'm living my life. I'm married. And my relationship, as much as I love my husband, it was one of the hardest parts of my life. There was conflict. I was hurting a lot. There were times where we were going to, separate. It was just a really difficult area of my life, which you would think would be one of the easiest parts of my life. And what I realize now working with clients is that for many people, this is a really hard part of their life. And with the people that they love the most, that's where they have the least inner peace. And there's the most conflict and challenges that come up. And so as I'm working with others, I'm also continuing to learn and develop and grow internally. And so I kind of got to a place in my marriage where it was good enough. Like there was a certain amount of resignation. It wasn't terrible. I loved him, but it was good enough. And we had good times. We had not so good times, but it's okay. Like I was in it. I wasn't thinking about leaving it anymore, but it was like, yeah, it's okay. So then I get a job where I'm doing a lot of public speaking. And as part of that, I had so much anxiety, so much insecurity. And it just, I hated it. It was so painful. But I was on the leadership team of this company, and I was the only person willing to do this, to actually go through the pain and suffering. Neither of the other two were. So I did that, but I decided I need some help with this. It's like, I can't keep doing this and keep suffering the way that I'm suffering, because I would feel nervous before. I would pretty much black out doing it. And then afterwards, I wouldn't be feeling relief. I would feel terrible. I would feel like I didn't do well enough. It was not, it's just all of this really hard thinking on myself. So the opposite of inner peace. So I decided, I had the opportunity to do an intensive with someone, and I decided that was going to be my focus. And so I explained what my issue was, and she said, well, what do you see so far? Like what has helped you, even just a little bit, what's helped you? And I said, well, I do recognize that all of this internal turmoil is coming from the stories in my head. Like, I know it's not really the talks that I'm doing. It's not the people, like it's all the narrative, my inner narrative. And it's really painful, and I can't change it. And I really want to stop this. I need some help stopping this. And so the woman that I was working with, she kind of, I think she felt some compassion for me, but she also saw that what I was doing was I was reacting to my reactivity. And I wasn't seeing that. So in my mind, innocently, I was thinking that as a person who is on a spiritual learning experience, wanting to, live life with more inner peace, that meant I should have less of those kind of experiences in my life, and that my job was to figure out how to have less of them. But what she showed me was that in my process of the way that I was looking at it was that I was seeing it as if there was something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And basically, I was having a normal human experience that we all have, but I was making it mean more than that. I was making it mean that there was a problem with myself. I was making it mean that, I needed to do something to change my experience. And all that did was, in the reaction to my reactivity, was it magnified the experience I was having. And what she helped me to see was that if I could just see what was happening and understand that, I'm having a lot of stirred up thinking in this moment, period. doesn't mean anything more than that. And something that I had completely not, I knew it intellectually because I'm spending my life pointing people in the direction of their true nature. But what I wasn't really seeing on an experiential level was that there is this intelligence that's inside of me and inside of every single one of us, that when we get stirred up, the intelligence brings us back to peace inside of ourselves. Just like on the physical level, if my body gets a cold, I get the cold, my body knows exactly what to do. Hopefully I take care of myself, and then I come back into health. Well, I wasn't doing that with my emotional experience. I was getting into emotional upset, emotional reactivity, and then I was trying to do something with it and trying to change it and trying to fix it and needing it to be different so that I could be okay. And so after that intensive, what I saw is that I was okay, even when I was having all of this emotional upset. And not only was I okay, that I would naturally come back to that place of inner peace, because that's how I'm designed. And that's how we're all designed. Yeah. And so what that experience did for me was it gave me a deeper connection with that place of well-being inside of myself. And it helped me to see that whatever my emotional reactivity was, I didn't need to take it as seriously. I didn't need to do anything to fix it. And when I was allowing it to just be, it was fluid, and I would come back to peace much more quickly. There would be much less suffering. But the byproduct of this, which I had not expected whatsoever, was that it completely shifted my relationship with my husband. Oh. And what I saw was that previously I had been doing the same thing in my relationship. I had been looking at conflict or upset as something to fix. And then I was going to all kinds of strategies on how to fix the problem. And my husband jokes about this because the funny thing is we work together now. We work together with couples doing relationship intensives. But he'll say, you know, he got dragged to every single self-help workshop out there, usually under threat of some ultimatum that if he didn't go, our marriage was going to be over. And so I had to eat a lot of humble pie. But what I saw from this experience is that when I was more connected in my well-being, I saw him completely differently. Because when I was in a place of peace inside of myself, I wasn't taking his behavior personally. Mm-hmm. And what I had been doing for years, for our entire marriage, is that I had been very sensitive to any kind of irritability, frustration, anger that he demonstrated. It didn't matter if it was directed toward me or if it was really about something else. I would tend to get destabilized. And instead of trying to fix myself in those situations, I would go to trying to fix him or trying to fix our relationship. And all that did was it magnified the problems and made them the focus rather than enjoying really what was working in a very good relationship ultimately. It shrunk what was working down in my experience and in my perspective and had me focusing on all the things that I thought was wrong. So when I felt that well-being and just that place of peace in a deeper way and didn't get destabilized immediately as soon as he got angry, it shifted the dynamic in our relationship. And I remember there's one very specific experience where I can't remember the content of the experience, but we were having an argument. No, actually, we weren't having an argument. Angus was upset with me. That's my husband's name. And he said something that was really not very kind. And I didn't react. And he was kind of floored that I didn't react. Like he was wondering, like, what's going on here? Maybe she's really gone off the deep end. So he asked me, he said, why aren't you reacting? And in a completely genuine response was that I said, I see your suffering. I see your suffering, and there's nothing for me to add to that. And I know that you're going to come back to yourself, but that's all it is right now. And that kind of woke him up to see like, wow. And what he said, which was really helpful for me to see, is that when I wasn't reacting to his quote unquote bad behavior, all he was left with was his own conscience. Because if I had reacted, he would have reacted to me, and then I would have reacted to him. It's like, well, it would look like I was a bitch, and it looked like he's an asshole, all of that. Right. And instead, he was left with his own, like, what am I doing here? why am I behaving this way? And of course, he settled and came back to himself and back to that place of home inside of himself. And then we're able to keep moving forward. And so what I saw from that is that it's really where each person is coming from in the relationship that makes the difference in a relationship. And so rather than focusing on the techniques and the strategies of fixing this thing, the relationship, it's really about each person in the relationship coming back to that place of inner peace inside of themselves and seeing for themselves what gets in the way of that. And in relationships, it always looks like it's the other person's fault. Like if only he were different, if only she were different, then I would have inner peace. But it's not. It's never that. And the way that the mind works is so tricky because it doesn't look like we're experiencing our own thoughts. It really looks like we're experiencing the other person. But as I got more and more clear, like, no, there's this filter, this lens of my own thinking that's creating what my internal experience is. That's the issue. And it's not that it's a issue to be fixed. It's just if I'm having a bad feeling, if I'm feeling reactive, that's a reflection of my state of mind in the moment. And just like with insecurity, whether it's anger, upset, sadness, that intelligence that's inside of each one of us is always going to bring all of us back to that place of inner peace inside of ourselves. That is our natural state. And I didn't see that as our natural state previously. I saw that as something that needed to be earned and fought for and worked for. And that was like a 180. It's like, that's not something that I have to earn. That's not something that I have to improve myself to get. That is just it. That is who we are. It's the direct path to that. And that's what transformed my relationship. And that's what I'm seeing in the work that we do with couples is really transformative in terms of them having that same kind of experience.
Yeah. So So even like, I heard you say so many things there, but, like we have so much inside of us that we don't see, right? So even from when you're a young child, you said that you decided you wanted to be a therapist or a doctor.
A doctor, yeah.
When you were a child. So there's something that triggered that in your life. And I think you said you had to you reconnected with your father who you hadn't seen since you were 2. So that's already in your life, right? That idea of, or that feeling of separation in family, I'm guessing. So I think we all have experiences like that, and we try to fix it. I see people all the time. We try to fix it. Me too.
Yeah.
And it's not really what you're saying. Is that's not really where it is or what it's about, or there's no reason to fix it. That the peace that's inside. I think that's why I was so drawn to do this program, Art of a Peaceful Mind, because if everybody could just feel that peace, then not only individual relationships, but everybody could get along so much better. Right?
Absolutely.
So how then, what would you say to somebody who hasn't discovered what you discovered yet, and but wants to feel that peace and is still struggling with trying to fix themselves? Because still we can understand it, but when you're still feeling like I have to fix it, or I have to fix him or her or them, what would you say to somebody?
So what I think is helpful is for people to start to recognize that place of peace and wisdom that is there. And to understand what's happening when they're not experiencing it. So somebody can say, well, I still need to fix myself. I need to fix my marriage or my husband. But if I was having a conversation with them, I would be looking at, well, really, let's have a look at that. Does your partner always look the same way? Does your experience of them shift based on where you're at inside of yourself. And most people will be able to recognize that when they're in a good mood, their kids, their partner, their colleagues, like life looks different when you're in a good mood. And when you're in a low mood, people tend to not look as good. Life doesn't look as good. Problems look bigger. And so I help them to see that that's an inner fluctuation, because it's the same person, but they look different depending on what your state of mind is. And so that's that's a clue to, oh, there's something that's shifting inside of me that has me see them differently. I can feel more peace at times with them being exactly the same, and I can feel a lot less peace at other times when they're actually probably even in a good mood at that point. And so when we start to see that, oh, that inner experience is a reflection of what my state of mind is, what the quality of my own thinking is, and that's fluid. It's not a constant. That's constant. The only thing that's constant is that it's constantly changing. And that even with all of that fluctuation, there's a place of inner peace that's there no matter what. And sometimes we experience it more, sometimes we experience it less. But that's the part that's unchanging. That's the part that doesn't go away. And so what I help people to look at is to, rather than be outwardly focused, saying life's going to be better when my marriage is better, when my husband is different, when my wife is different, when my partner's different. I help them kind of look in the other direction and look at what's really constant and unchanging in the midst of all of the fluctuation of their thoughts and feelings. And most of us have some kind of reference point for that, whether it's in the past, whether it's in the present. It doesn't have to be a huge peak experience. It can just be, sometimes when I'm sitting reading my book in the afternoon, I just feel that peace inside of me. I'm like, that's it. That's not coming from your book. That's not coming from outside of you. That's your true nature. That's who you are. And when we know that that's there for us and have an experiential reference point for it, I think people naturally tend to look in that direction, because none of us is designed to suffer. None of us wants to suffer. And so when we see that that's there, we are naturally going to move towards that place inside of ourselves, simply by valuing it and recognizing it and understanding what's happening when we're not experiencing it, which is simply that our state of mind is stirred up and that our physiology is responding to that. It's responding to our thoughts, and we're feeling that. And that's going to pass. And when we're in that state, we can't see things clearly. And we tend to think the worst. We tend to, that's the time when we're not supposed to send that email that we've written. That's the time not to make that phone call. We've all done it when we shouldn't, but that's the time not to do that. And we all know. We're like, what was I thinking? Why did I send that? But it's like and it's very, to me, just gets more and more simple. The more that I see this, it just gets more and more simple. We have common sense. We know when we're stirred up. But what we can get better at, or have a deeper knowing of, is who we are behind our thoughts and feelings. Mm-hmm. That's the mystery. I can't put that into words. None of us can, but we can look in that direction of what's greater than our thoughts and feelings and behaviors, and how that is who we are, just as much as our life experience is real to us as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really wonderful. So do you find that, well, I guess you said that most people can refer back to a place where they felt that peace inside. Are they able to access it through that memory? Does it help it come back, or is there something else that people can do to reignite that feeling within themselves? Do you know what I'm asking?
I think so, and you can let me know if I'm not understanding. But what I find is that people tend to, and myself absolutely was what I was doing, they tend to not value that, because it's in many ways very ordinary, and they look to what they consider the problems to be fixed. And like it was happening in my marriage, it magnifies the problems and gives a lot of respect to them and very little respect to that place of peace and ordinariness inside of each one of us. Mm-hmm. And so it's a reorientation of that love of respect, and that comes through simply understanding. What I've seen is that as people understand that that place of peace has everything we need inside of it. The answers that we need in the moment are there for us in a responsive way. It's what's constantly been there guiding us all along, whether we've been noticing it or not. But it hasn't necessarily been given the respect and the value that it deserves. And I know for myself, what I said, because I was such a workaholic, recovering still, I would say, but I wouldn't respect inspiration and ease and grace and flow. I thought the only way I was going to get anywhere was through hard work, grit, and I would just work myself until I dropped and my health would break down, and then I would, recover and come back. And it was not that ever. I wasn't getting things accomplished because of that. It was really in spite of my craziness that things were getting done. Angus and I will be married 25 years coming up soon. And it's like the beginning of our relationship, the first 10 years were really, really hard, but it was lasting not because of all of the hard work that I was putting into it. It was because of that moments of sanity, moments of peace that would come in where we would drop into that natural place of peace and experience the love, not just the love between the two of us, but the love that is inside of us, the love that is our true nature. And when you have two people that are in that experience of themselves in a relationship, well, it's beautiful. And when you have even one person that's able to experience that, it helps the other person experience it more. And there becomes, this learning together of how to drop into that place of, what I would call the true self, and experience the depths of that, but also the ordinariness of that. And it's, I think it can look like we have to go and sit on a mountain and meditate for 20 years to get anywhere. And I was really, on that path of thinking that. But what I found so helpful for myself and for my clients is to recognize it's right here. Uh-huh. It's right now. There's no work and no effort required. And we simply drop into it every single day, probably multiple times a day. And when people start to get eyes for that and get a sense of that and realize, well, this is happening, every night before I fall asleep, there's some type of peace that happens. Well, maybe someone's not falling asleep until 3 a.m. because they've got insomnia, but at some point when they fall asleep, their mind lets go and they drop into that place. So it's getting a sense of that's it.
Yeah.
Not what we think it is.
Right. So it almost seems like what you're saying is that because it's ordinary, we just gloss over it. It's not like drama. It's not like God coming out of the sky or something. It's just, it seems ordinary. So we don't pay any attention until we really recognize it and can drop into that and feel the peace of that ordinary moment. Before that, we're looking for drama. We're looking for fixing.
Yeah. And working really hard. And that because we're designed, like the natural design of us as human beings is to move away from pain. And that is like, if I've got my hand on a hot stove, my instinct is not to keep my hand there. My instinct is to take my hand away. I don't need to think about it. I just know that. Mm-hmm. Well, when we understand that if we're suffering, if we're in pain, that increases when we go into that and try to fix it and try to change it, like I was doing with my whole insecurity thing. When we understand that just creates more suffering, then we naturally stop doing it. We don't need a technique to not do that. We see what we're doing and we go, oh, that's taken me in a direction that creates more suffering. So we naturally stop and we naturally orient ourselves more to where we have more of the nice, lighter, joy-filled feelings that are who we are. And it's so simple, like you're saying, and ordinary, that people miss it. Mm-hmm. And it's not what our culture is telling people. the self-help culture, the therapy industry, it is all focused on you need to work on yourself, or you need something outside of yourself to feel better. And it can be done in a materialistic way in terms of, you get the right car, you're going to feel better. But it can also be done in a self-help way where you need to get somewhere. And people buy into that thinking that that's how they're going to have less suffering. And what it does is it creates more suffering, and it takes people further away from what the truth is that it's here in this moment, but for whatever the stirred up thoughts are. And thoughts settle naturally. If we allow them, they just settle naturally. That's what they're designed to do.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I'd love to keep talking for another half an hour, but we're running out of time. So would you like to share about your free gift? You have one, right?
Yes, I do. I'm very happy to share. I have a free ebook that I'd like to offer all of the listeners that's called Relationships. And it's a collection of essays that really show different ways of pointing to what we've been talking to for these past 30 minutes. So I'm very happy to share that with all of the people that are participating in your series.
Great. So I hope everybody takes advantage of that. It's wonderful. Have a great day, and thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim. Very grateful and love what you're doing. Really acknowledge you.
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of it.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.